Okay, so like I said, today we'll be focusing on teaching assistantships and English language requirements. But first off, we just want to say congratulations on your admittance to UC San Diego. We are so excited to begin interacting and supporting our new cohort of students. It's such an exciting time for us to be with our new students as we build on our Triton community. All right, so we have so many different experts here to just join us and share their knowledge. So my name is Grace Fuller. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as the manager of international experience and engagement over at the International Services and Engagement Office, often referred to as ISEO. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves. So go ahead, Jessica.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jessica Boyle. I use she, her pronouns as well, and I am an international student advisor here in the International Services and Engagement Office, ISEO.
And unfortunately, Shauna couldn't be with us here today, so I'll be sharing some slides on behalf of the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, or GEPA. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Jessica Quinn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'll be giving a little bit of information about the English language certification exam.
Hi, all. I'm Erilyn. I'm in the engaged teaching part of the Teaching and Learning Commons, and I'm really excited to talk with you a bit about the support that we have to help you develop as instructors once you're at UC San Diego. And although we forgot to put her name on the slide, I want to also hand it over to my amazing colleague, Minju. Minju, please take it away.
Awesome, no worries, and thank you so much, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Minju Kim. I am a postdoctoral scholar at Engaged Teaching Hub with Erilyn. I also started as a PhD international grad student from South Korea, so I'm so excited to have you all here and have you enjoy UC San Diego. Thanks, everyone.
Last but certainly not least, we also have Courtney joining us. We're so lucky. Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Aguila. I'm the Assistant Director of the Graduate Student Financial Support Unit in GEPA, and I'll be joining today to answer your questions later about employment and anything else that might come up. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so a little bit of a snapshot of how we'll spend our time together today. We have a few important reminders that we want to share with you all. Then we're going to spend some time talking more in depth about English proficiency requirements to become a teaching assistant. We'll then transition to what support looks like for our instructional assistants here at UC San Diego. We'll end with upcoming webinars and additional resources, and we do have time dedicated at the end for open question and answer. So we really want to make sure that this webinar is useful to you and you can get as many questions answered here as possible. So some reminders, you are in listen only mode, which means unfortunately we can't hear you, but you can hear us. So the main way that we are going to interact today is through the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. If for some reason we don't get to a question that you've submitted, you can always reach out to our office at icontact.ucsd.edu. And finally, we are recording, so you'll be able to view this webinar recording as well as all previous webinar recordings at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. This is the same place that you can actually register for upcoming webinars, so it's a great resource. Here's just a friendly reminder of what that Q&A feature might look like on your Zoom panel. And then you can also submit questions. We ask some of your questions might be answered through the content of today's presentation. So we ask that you hold off and maybe wait to see if that's the case, but you can submit questions again throughout today's webinar, but we will have dedicated time at the end to get into more detail. Okay, so here are some of your first steps checklists. So on behalf of the Department of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, and more specifically graduate admissions, congratulations again. Your first step will be logging into your application account at the URL listed here, connect.grad.ucsd.edu/apply. This is where you'll access your application portal. Filling out that statement of legal residence form is a really important to-do item for many of you. And please do note that most students are provisionally admitted to UC San Diego. So in order to, you can still continue under provisionally admitted to, for example, apply for your visa documents for your Form I-20 or DS 2019, as well as do a checklist. In a moment here, I'll share a screen of kind of what some of those forms might look like under pending admissions documents. And finally, you are more than welcome to contact grad admissions at ucsd.edu if any questions should arise regarding pending admission documents. So here's a little snapshot of what your applicant portal might look like. So again, under those form sections, you have your like decision reply form. It is important. Many students, I think, in their excitement are so excited to start their journey, but sometimes forget to submit the decision reply form. This is really helpful for us so that we can set up all of your systems and accounts at UC San Diego so that you can then go ahead and do the things that we'll talk about. And then this is a little bit where you'll see the statement of legal residence as well. Also want to call people's attention to this bottom right-hand corner of the screen where it's broken down in terms of what to do immediately before you arrive on campus, when you arrive, and specifically for international students. Now going into a little bit more detail for international students. So this is a snapshot of our website, ISEO. So inewstudent.ucsd.edu. On the left-hand side, you'll see kind of that landing page, and you'll go to your education level. So most of you will be graduate students, master's and PhD, and then it will take you to step 1, 2, and 3. So many of you are applying right now for your F1 and J1 visa status. So this will kind of break it down step by step, what's entailed there. Then next, we'll give you a preview of how to prepare for your arrival, and then finally what to do upon arrival. So inewstudent.ucsd.edu is great to reference back to in terms of kind of where you're at in the process, what you need to do up until this point, and then what you have to look forward to. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Jessica to talk a little bit more in detail about English requirements for teaching assistants.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from San Diego. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about the requirements that you might need to fulfill if you want to gain a teaching assistantship once you join us here in San Diego. I work for the Division of Extended Studies, which is a different division that helps to administer the ELCE test. But the conditions of employment that you might have to fulfill in becoming a graduate teaching assistant are determined by the grad division, by GEPA. So the policy from the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs says that we expect international graduate students at UC San Diego to have a high level of speaking and listening competence in the English language before you can be appointed as a TA. So this is a condition of your employment, and there are different ways to satisfy that condition. So I'll explain a little bit more, but basically the process for you, if you're interested in becoming a teaching assistant, whether in your home department or in another department, has a few steps. So let me give you a little outline, and I'll explain in a little bit more detail my role and the things that you might need to do with extended studies in order to fulfill these conditions of employment. So roughly, I've boiled it down to 7 steps, and I'll talk about these first 2 in a little bit more detail. So you will be free to apply to teaching assistant positions through different departments, your home department or a different hiring department, we would call it. And they would be the ones to check your application and determine whether you have fulfilled the conditions of employment. So the department that wants to hire you will determine the need for the English language certification exam. So they'll determine whether you've already fulfilled the English language requirement or whether you need to prove your speaking and listening competence in English. On the next slide here, I explain that there's 3 different ways, and these are all on our website as well. I'll give you the link to our website that kind of breaks down and explains these in a little bit more details. There are 3 ways to show that you've satisfied the English proficiency requirement. The yellow one in the middle here is probably the easiest to check yourself. If the most recent degree that you have completed was earned from an institution where English is the sole language of instruction. And the way to check that for international institutions is using the WHED website that I have linked here. But there are two other ways to satisfy the oral English proficiency requirement. You might have already submitted a speaking score that is sufficient, or you may need to take the ELCE, which I'm responsible for. What is a sufficient speaking score? Let's take a look. You might have submitted a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a PTE, Pearson Tested English score. So if you've already achieved 26 or higher on the speaking section of the TOEFL, 8 or higher on the speaking section of the IELTS, and 84 or higher on the PTE, then you've satisfied the English proficiency requirements to become a TA. If your score is below one of these, your speaking subscore is below one of these, then the graduate division requires that you take our English language certification exam. The scores required to be eligible for the ELCE are narrowly defined as well. If you've taken the TOEFL test, if you have a speaking score between 23 and 25, you're eligible for the ELCE, with the IELTS between 7 and 7.5, and with the PTE between 66 and 83. If your scores are below any of these cutoffs, so below 23, below 7, or below 66, depending on the test, we see it as a sign that indicates you need a little bit more work on your listening and speaking skills in English. So we recommend an ESL course, which you might take through the Division of Extended Studies. We have many courses that focus on speaking and pronunciation skills offered each quarter, but you could also take a course through a different institution and submit a verification. So once you've determined, or the hiring department has determined whether or not you need the ELCE test, depending on the 3 different ways to fulfill the language requirements, the hiring department will request a session on your behalf with me. And I have to coordinate between the department representative, there's a faculty member present, between your schedule and between my schedule and the proctors who help me out here. So the hiring department will coordinate that, and the session will take place on Zoom. I have a little bit more detail here about what to expect if you do need to take the ELCE. What type of test it is. This is solely an oral English proficiency test. There's no writing component, and there is a group of raters. So in addition to a linguist from the Division of Extended Studies International Programs, there's also a faculty representative from the hiring department. This test usually takes just 15 minutes, and we're currently administering it via Zoom, so it is live and online. We do a short interview and a teaching simulation. So you can see that the 3 sections down there in the structure, I do a little welcome, we do a little warm-up interview, and then a little bit more technical section at the end. If you are required to take the ELCE and your session is scheduled by the hiring department, I'll send you more information when I issue an official invitation. Basically, we want to check your pronunciation, listening comprehension, and how you handle questions, your vocabulary level, your speech flow or fluency, your grammatical accuracy, and how you organize and clarify your ideas if you are explaining something in sort of everyday English, or if you're explaining something more technical from your field. The test is administered 4 times per year, so we have 4 testing windows, and you'll see that there's quite a long one in September because we anticipate a lot of new teaching assistants for the fall quarter. So you might be taking the ELCE in fall, but it's also offered at other times throughout the year, right before each new quarter starts. So now we've sort of hit the end of your checklist here. Once you've taken the ELCE in person on Zoom, I send the hiring recommendation directly to the hiring department. Later, I send an individual test test report to the student. And if necessary, Teaching and Learning Commons might contact you to take a support course during your first quarter concurrently with your TA appointment. The possible outcomes from our ELCE session might be a clear pass. You can see that in green at the top, and this means that you can TA with no restrictions. But we also have other levels of recommendation. So a pass with conditional certification might require does require the support of the course from Teaching and Learning Commons. Similar to the provisional pass, which also requires you to retest just to verify that your score has improved. If you did not pass, there is a chance to get support from Teaching and Learning Commons and to retake the test so that you could become a TA in the future. So here's a great chance to transition to what Teaching and Learning Commons can do for you. If you receive any ELCE score below a pass, so below that green band on the previous slide, you're required to complete the course concurrently with your first quarter of TAing or in the quarter before you become a TA or retake the ELCE. So we report the directly to the staff at Teaching and Learning Commons for the ELPII course. And in week 2, they'll help you enroll in the course and sort of structure and give you everything that you need. So with that information, I'll hand it off to my colleagues at Teaching and Learning Commons. But if you have questions about your particular situation outside of your home department or your hiring department, you can contact me or check on our website for details.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Hi, all. So I just wanted to briefly cover and explain a little bit more about the teaching support for you as an instructional assistant when you're at UC San Diego and when you're preparing to be an instructional assistant. What do I mean by this term, instructional assistant? This is a title that actually encompasses a wide range of roles, including teaching assistants. So when you're being paid to assist with a course, instructional apprentices, which you might be while you're receiving credit for also teaching or helping with a course, tutors and readers. Tutors, you're working more one-on-one with students or in small groups. Readers, you're doing more grading. All right. So Minju and I both work with the Teaching and Learning Commons, and this is a unit on campus that actually holds services both for instructors and for students. And so I really wanted to make sure you all knew just really briefly that we are here to support you both as an instructor, and there's also support for you as a student. In particular, the Writing Communication Learning Services or Writing Hub is the space where you can go to get help as a writer and as you're writing, whether it's dissertation or research papers or whatever it might be. They are also there to help. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. All right, so this slide has a lot of information. Apologies, we should have probably animated it. But I just wanted to share briefly that what we're looking at here is, first and foremost, as you're coming in, obviously you're going to want to, when you're looking for a TA position, you want to prepare to teach in English because that is the language of the classes here. So you'll be reviewing key terms from your field in English. This is going to help you also prepare for the exam, side note, for the ELCE exam, practice explaining concepts from your field in English. You can also take a class with extended studies if you want some more extensive prep beforehand. So that sort of stuff you can do even before coming in. When you're actually looking for a TA position, you'll apply through your department. There's also some positions that will be posted more campus-wide, but first and foremost, your department or your program is your main point of contact. If necessary, based on the things that Jessica previously spoke about, you'll take the ELCE exam, and then if it's recommended from those scores, you'll take the ELPII course, and that's with the Teaching and Learning Commons. And throughout all of this, you are welcome to participate in any teaching training, so workshops, et cetera, that I'll talk about in a moment, that will sort of help you stand out as an instructor. Other than the ELPII course, the others aren't aimed specifically to work on your English skills. But of course, obviously speaking, being in those spaces, you'll get to sort of learn some teaching strategies that'll just take, calm some of the nerves that can come with teaching, make teaching more efficient and effective, which is our next part. So overall, that is what we'd love to help you do while you're at UC San Diego, both when you're first coming in and throughout your time, is helping you learn these strategies that is going to make teaching more fun. Basically, teaching can be a lot of fun. It can also be a lot of work. So we want to help you learn how to work smarter, not harder, and how to have a better experience. And again, that's through teaching workshops that we offer. We offer some longer non-credit bearing courses that you could take and certificate programs. Basically, we want to help you both succeed in gain skills and experiences that will help you succeed both while you're teaching at UC San Diego and also later on the job market. So this includes, developing communication and interpersonal skills that will help you whether or not you're going on in a teaching role. A lot of these teaching skills will carry you a long ways. I know that's hard to think about at the beginning, but I promise it really does pay off. So just as a quick overview, what you'll see coming in, and then after this, I'd love for Minju to add on for anything that that you want to add in here. When you are officially hired as an instructional assistant, so this is after you've contacted your department, after you've taken the ELCE exam if needed, and after you've been offered the IA role, you'll get some online modules that'll be assigned to you. And these are really short. They're 30 minutes each, 4 of them. But these are really meant to introduce some key ideas of professionalism and leadership, learning through diversity, teaching students with disabilities, fostering academic integrity. So some core ideas that are just going to be an introduction to what you'll be looking at in that IA role. Your department hopefully also has some great departmental training for you as an IA. Each department has a really fantastic role called an IA faculty advisor. And so that's a faculty member who is there as sort of a bridge for you, a contact for you to reach out to about questions. They can't necessarily help you get an IA position, but once you're in that role, they're a great liaison, a great contact for you to have as you're trying to develop as an instructor. And then we also offer a lot of support through the Teaching and Learning Commons for you as an IA. So from a teaching symposium in week 0, the communication for teaching class, which is the ELPII one that was mentioned earlier, and different versions of those depending on what your needs are. Teaching workshops, we do one-on-one consultations, and we have a ton of online resources and checklists that that'll be sent to you when you're in your IA role, and will be available on the website as well. So Minju, I wanted to invite you in here if there's anything I've missed or anything you want to share about your experience sort of coming into teaching as an international graduate student.
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much, Erilyn. You nailed it, by the way. I just want to add, I want to highlight 2 things. One, the Writing Hubs provides so much, such a variety of courses and variety of help that you can get from, even if it's like a 1-page abstract you want to submit, or even if it's like a 2-page writing sample that you want to share with your advisor. So I highly, highly recommend going for their one-to-one consultation sessions. They're all free. And I also want to highlight the ELPII courses. So the courses that extended studies are not required, but those you have to pay for, and those are really expensive. But the ones that we recommend or require after taking ELCE exams is ELPII courses at Engage Teaching are free, and we have amazing instructors. We have one-to-one office hours that you can come and practice speaking in English or practice certain terms with our instructors. And there will be group sessions that you can actually have a cohort, a community that you can share your experiences as an international student, and also how or what things were hard, what things worked well for you with others. So I really highly recommend those. I was in a position where I thought I was comfortable speaking English, but not as comfortable in teaching. If that's your case, I would still really really encourage you to take workshops at Teaching Learning Commons, Engage Teaching, and Writing Hub. And if you are eligible for ELPII courses, I highly recommend, because that will make you feel empowered as a TA and feel more confident as you go to the job market.
Yeah, thank you, Minju. So yeah, I just wanted to again encourage you to reach out. Know that you're not alone when you come in for the teaching role. The ELPII program is fantastic within the Engage Teaching, and really any of our programs we have. You know, we both in the Engage Teaching and in the writing space as well. There's a lot of focus on supporting our multilingual learners and writers and instructors. You bring in tremendous assets, and we want to help empower you to share those with your students. So thank you all. Please reach out with questions as well.
All right, thank you, thank you. I know that there have been many questions in the Q&A so far, so please continue to ask all of your good questions. So we have some final reminders. You can already start to get engaged with our UC San Diego community. So our iEvents calendar is a live calendar that's populated by our office, as well as different offices on campus, different student orgs. And so this is a great way to kind of get a preview of what's happening at UC San Diego. iprograms.ucsd.edu offers a snapshot of some of our signature programs. So these are reoccurring programs that happen throughout the year. For example, Global Coffee Hour is a monthly coffee hour where we invite our community to eat some pastries, drink some coffee, and get to know one another. English in Action is an English conversation program. So it's another resource for you if you want to get more comfortable in your English speaking. You can get matched with an English native speaker to practice English once a week. Triton Trekkers is our collaboration with Outback Adventures, where we have trips to explore San Diego. So maybe that's kayaking the Cove, maybe that's rock climbing Mission Gorge, maybe that's hiking Torrey Pines. So lots of fun stuff there. Yes, we have lots of programs. So again, if you go to iprograms.ucsd.edu, you can kind of learn a little bit more. One program that I want to highlight specifically is our Grad Pals Peer Mentorship Program. So this is a program that matches our incoming international graduate students with our current international graduate students. I know that some of you have already applied, so thank you for your interest. We're so excited. We are currently in the process of recruiting more mentors for this application, so that you all can be in communication over the summer. So spring is when we recruit more mentors as well as mentees and match, and then in the summer is when some of that communication takes place. And then finally, we are active on social media. So we hope that you will follow us there. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel is where you can also find all of these webinar recordings. So some additional resources before we transition into our question and answer. There are some things that you can start doing now. So you can request your visa documents right now. Jessica went into a little bit more detail about that at applying for your US visa. You can do that via the iPortal, but iNewStudent is a great resource for you to just understand the different instructions and kind of steps in that process. You can also begin applying for your on-campus housing. So once you're admitted and you accept your offer of admission, you can begin to apply for on-campus housing at hth.ucsd.edu. A friendly reminder, so May 1st is our internal deadline for requesting your visa documents if your graduate program begins prior to August 1st. So want to encourage you all, specifically if you are a summer start student, if you are starting your academic program over the summer. The deadline for some immunization requirements will be in July. And then September is a really exciting time for our fall students. So tuition is due, there's move-in, check-in, and many orientations, one of which will be your new international student orientation. So you can learn more at iorientation.ucsd.edu. Okay, so we have been working our way through many topics that might apply to you during your time here at UC San Diego. Later this week on Thursday, we'll talk a little bit more about student life and what it might look like to get involved on campus. And then later on in May, we're going to talk a little bit about finances and student counts. We'll talk about transferring your SEVIS record. So again, if you have attended an institution in the US and you want to transfer your SEVIS record. And then on May 9th, we'll talk about campus safety. As a reminder, you can access all of these webinar recordings at inustudentwebinars.ucsd.edu, and then you can also sign up for upcoming webinars. Okay, so now is when we will transition a little bit to our question and answer. So I first kind of want to throw it out to my co-presenters. Are there any questions or common questions that have been coming through the Q&A that you think might be beneficial to verbally highlight?
So this is Courtney again from GEPA, and I have 4 that are sort of interrelated. So the questions are, do teaching assistants get paid? Are there fee remissions? And then also, how and when can I apply for these teaching assistant positions? So the first thing to know is, yes, teaching assistants, readers, tutors, they receive a salary from payroll in addition to fee remissions when employment is at least 25% for a whole quarter for graduate students. So you will get a fee remission that'll go directly to your student account if your appointment meets that eligibility criteria, and then you'll also receive a salary component. So those are separate. Applications for TA appointments vary throughout the year, as do all the instructional positions. But our recommendation is to first check with the academic home department that you're going to be receiving your degree from. They are going to have sort of the best information on when those regular and recurring appointments are accepting applications, and what the steps are to apply. I'm going to put in the chat a few links. I'm going to put in the student academic title rates, a web page that GEPA hosts that has employment opportunities and will link out to open TA campaigns that list programs that don't have regular students, like the Teaching and Learning Commons, like the writing programs. And then I'm also going to put in there a page on fee payment information for those instructional assistant roles, so that you can see exactly which fees are covered for what type of work. Okay, those are those 4.
Thank you, Courtney. It is so helpful to have you here. Jessica, I know that you have been very busy answering a lot of questions in the chat, and you probably still are, so I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I'm wondering if you're seeing any common questions come through that you'd like to speak to.
There were a few common questions, thanks. Some students were asking if there are any differences across departments in the requirements on the speaking section of TOEFL or IELTS that you've submitted. No, this is a policy set by the grad division, so it's the same across all departments. Those requirements are listed in the slides here or on our website. So as long as your score is higher than those cutoffs, there's no need for the ELCE. If your score is within the section, you're eligible for the ELCE. If your score is a little bit lower, you may have to take some class or show that you've worked on your oral English proficiency to become eligible for the ELCE. And then there were also several questions about how to apply. And honestly, because I do not work for main campus and do not work for one of the hiring departments, I don't have a lot of experience with the step-by-step process of students applying for TA positions and communicating with the hiring department. I just get the other side of it. So if there is anyone who can give a little bit more insight into the detailed process.
So in general, when a department has a need for instructional support, we open campaigns through the Instructional Assistant Data Management System, and that is a long name. We lovingly call it the IA system. And so you will receive either a notice from your department about an open campaign, or you may read about it on a website. One of the links that I put in the chat, the employment opportunities, you can see sort of at the bottom of the page what an open campaign looks like and what positions available sort of look like on the web. And then departments will say, you know, we want you to answer a questionnaire or submit, you know, your resume. And if you're selected, the rest of the hiring process sort of comes through the IA system. So your official offer, your appointment letter, and then your acceptance of that all happens in the IA system. Your HR contact in your department may also connect with you and ask for hiring documents, but navigating sort of what you'll have to do is really guided through the IA system. So hopefully that'll help. TOEFL scores to the hiring department, that I'm not super sure about, but we can find out and maybe get that answer back to you. I have a couple other questions. So this question was, do they cover our health insurance also? And I take this to mean, does the fee remission cover the health insurance? The answer is yes. So the fee remissions are set by the UAW, which is the union that worked and bargained with the university to establish the collective bargaining unit that covers these positions. And health insurance, it was bargained for and is covered by the fee remission. So it covers tuition, student services fee, health insurance, campus fees. And so one of those links on there, that fee remission for academic student employees, shows the grid of all the fees that are covered. So the answer to that one is yes. And then the next question I see is, what is the difference between a graduate student or graduate research assistant and a graduate student researcher? Do they offer the same perks as a TA? So graduate research assistant, I don't think that we have that title here in San Diego. The GRA position, I think, is used in some of the other UCs. Here, we only hire graduate student researchers. You may hear like staff research assistant, which is not the same thing, but on this campus and for your purposes as a graduate student, you may be hired into a graduate student researcher position. Those roles are research focused under the direction of a faculty member or a PI towards the purpose of some research aim or your own dissertation. Similar perks, but not exactly the same. It's a different collective bargaining agreement. At 25% or more for the whole quarter, those positions do offer a fee remission that is comparable to the TA fee remission. So if you're hired as a GSR, you'll want to make sure that you're talking to your hiring department. Those appointment letters are also managed through the IA system, and the appointment letter that you'll receive for either one of those positions will detail every single benefit that you're eligible for based on the contract and what your pay rate will be and what your pay schedule will be. So a lot of those questions will get answered for you once you're selected. And I see two more that are like similar. We'll just go through them. When can one apply for TA positions? We talked about this one a little bit already. TA positions, a lot of the assignments happen in the spring for the following fall, but they are open and out there throughout the year. So you'll want to check the resources that we've provided, your academic home department, sometimes Handshake, for sort of like the latest of what's out there. What percent of tuition fee is remitted? So if you're hired as an instructional support in one of those roles, a TA, reader, tutor, it's 100% remission of student services fee, tuition, campus fees, and health insurance. So it's basically everything except the non-resident tuition and fees. And for more information on the non-resident, you'll want to talk to your academic home department. And let's see, do everyone who are GSRs get full tuition remission and stipend, and where can you apply for GSRs? So GSRs have the same eligibility criteria as TAs. So the requirements are employment at least 25% for a full quarter. And you have to be academically eligible too, right? So if you were in our other presentation, or if you're perusing the GEPA website, you'll see good academic standing, at least a 3.0 GPA in your grad level work within your support time limits, and then hitting that 25% benchmark. That makes you eligible for that full remission. So we don't do partial remission here. If you are eligible, you get the full shebang. And GSR appointments are managed mostly the same as TAs. As I mentioned, the process is facilitated through the IA system. I guess the thing to know about the difference is GSR appointments are typically assigned rather than like a TA campaign where a few spots are open and people may apply for them. GSR appointments are usually assigned. The majority of them are in the academic home departments. So I think really the best place for finding a GSR appointment is going to be in your academic home department. And then the next question is, let's see, is GSRs for the first year and TA for second year grad students? It varies. We typically don't see TAs right in the first quarter of the first year. And that's just because, as I mentioned, the hiring for fall is usually happening in spring and early summer. So the timing just doesn't always work out. But our first year students are eligible for either positions. It's just a matter of what your program is like and what campaigns are open and what assignments are available. And I'm going to skip one and just go to the full remission question. Is GSR waiving full remission for international students? So the answer is maybe and sometimes. So GSRs who work at that 25% benchmark, it covers student services fee, tuition, health insurance, campus fees, and for our international students, it covers the non-resident supplemental tuition. So it's different from the instructional roles, and it's a pretty big difference. So that's why we want to make sure that you are in communication with your academic home department to find out what your department may or may not be covering for you. But GSRs get a waiver, get a payment for that non-resident supplemental tuition. Good questions. You all are going to be pros at remission and grad employment by the end of this. You're going to know everything as you go in to your first year. So I will take a pause and see if we want to answer some of the other ones before we go back to, I see another employment question.
Marilyn and Manju, I just wanted to see if there are any questions that have come through that you'd love to add to or speak to from your end.
I'll just say that I agree that these questions are fantastic, and I'm so glad that we have Courtney here because these are all the logistics and questions that you need coming in. I wanted to briefly address sort of what makes you, beyond the language requirements, what makes you eligible or what will affect your selection as a TA, because I know that's often a concern. The short answer is I mean, unless the GPA goes below a very, there's probably some cutoff, but generally it's less about your GPA and more about, you know, maybe your experience in that field. And also I want to share too that taking some of the teaching preparation programs can actually help make you more competitive. So if you're worried about getting TA positions, then as you're applying and as you're, prepping with the language requirements as well, taking, a workshop or engaging with some online resources about teaching is something you can communicate that to the person you're applying to work with as well. So if you are really interested in teaching for a particular course and if they ask for a letter or anything like that, you can say that you've done this teaching training. You can talk about teaching in a different way. So I just wanted to mention that is not often a requirement. Some departments do have TA training as a requirement, but the more you do, the more appealing it's, if you think about yourself as an employer looking to hire someone who's coming in with some training is certainly going to be appealing. So I just want to mention that. So not so much what will hinder you, but what could help strengthen. Most of the others have been, beyond my role. So I just appreciate learning along with you all.
All right.
I also agree, echo everything what Arian said. Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, go right ahead.
I think I'll share just one more thing. There are in the employment opportunities website, sometimes there are opportunities to teach a language course or TA for a language course that you're a native speaker of. Like, for example, there's like classes that teach Korean, teach Mandarin Chinese. So that's another opportunity, although it's really rare. So it's okay if you don't get to pass ELCE right away or take classes right away. But I also want to echo what Erin said. Please use our asynchronous online course on teaching, and I will also share a link to IA cheat sheet that has overall ideas of what you will need as a TA in the chat. So thank you, Courtney.
Thank you. So the next question is, if my GPA is below 3.0, will it affect my selection as a TA and for your mission both? And so the answer is potentially yes. I'm going to put in the chat our published grad student academic eligibility criteria. GEPA and the university prioritizes your academic progress above all else. And so even though, having that GPA below a 3.0 does impact, what positions you may be eligible for, I don't want it to discourage you. As a whole, we are here to support you, and we want to be able to work with you and your department to find a solution. So yes, but I would say don't panic. We are here for you, and it is in, a major part of the reason that we are all here to make sure that you succeed. So yes, yes, but don't panic. Okay, and then the other question I wanted to answer was, as a TA, what are the typical roles and responsibilities? What do they look like? I'm also going to put in the chat the types of academic student employees, and on that page, you'll see a description of the different roles, and you'll see a template letter for what the teaching assistant role consists of. And there's an appendix there, and it sort of has like a checklist, like, are you going to expect it to do office hours or assist in these different ways? And so different programs will expect different support of their teaching assistants, right? So we may not see the same type of work in a writing program as we would in a chemistry lab. So the checklist that's there is sort of a template for the different departments to just pick what's going to be best for their program. So I'll put that in the chat also. And let's see, I see one here about the student academic title rates. Yeah, so there are steps like step 1 and step 2. The new bargaining agreement provided for some experience-based salary increases. So teaching assistants with 0 quarters of experience can start at step 1, and then after 3 quarters, they bump up to step 2. After 3 more quarters, I should say successful quarters, then they bump up to step 3. Some programs, though, will start at step 2 and some programs were started at step 3. So that's what those steps are on there. Those are monthly pay rates, and I think one of the columns shows the pay rate at 50%, and 50% is the max that you can work during the academic year. And so that's before tax. That's the before tax rate. And then I'll just answer one more at the bottom. Let's see. In the minimum qualifications section, there's a bullet point that says graduate students must not have more than a total of 8 units of F and or U grade overall. What does that mean? So an F grade is a failing grade and a U is an unsatisfactory. And so in your first quarter here, you have presumably no grades, so that wouldn't apply to you. But as you move through your grad program, GEPA keeps a running tally of the total number of units of failed or unsatisfactory grades. And so once you are, at 8 or more, then we're starting to look at things like academic probation. We're starting to look at really looking at academic progress. And at that point, you may not be eligible for continued financial support or employment. Okay. Let's see what else is here. How much tax is levied? Tax is such a good and deep question. It varies based on the tax treaties with the different countries. And I know a lot of things, but I don't know what all those rates are. And so if you have a question about the tax that you can expect, I can also put in the chat a link to UC Path. UC Path is our UC-wide payroll office, and you can submit a ticket and share with them the country that you'll be coming from, and they can share with you what the tax rates are. Okay, and then let's see, regarding salary, is pay raise for PhD students still being processed? So the salary increases for all of our graduate students are governed by the collective bargaining agreements. And the bargaining agreement right now it was a 2-year contract, and the raises are in the contract. So I better keep track of what I'm saying. I'm going to put in the chat, but I can also put in a link to the bargaining agreement, and you can see what the salary increases are going to be for through the end of that program. And then you can also see it on the academic salary rates. There's a 23-24 chart, and there's a 24-25 chart, which also lists it. So yes, on the raises, but they're not still being processed. It's already been established. All right. I feel that the other questions are like travel assistance. Anybody?
So my understanding, if I am interpreting the question correctly, as a part of your compensation for being an instructional assistant, a TA, a GSR, etc., it is not common or likely that you would get travel assistance as a part of that compensation. So I would not expect that travel assistance for being a TA would be a part of that compensation package. Feel free to any of my co-presenters add to that, or if for the students asking that question, if that's maybe not exactly what you were asking, feel free to put up a follow-up question in the chat, but just wanted to speak to that a little bit.
Okay. I just reposted the IA links, the eligibility, the contract, the descriptions. Let me get the link for the UC path. That one's coming. I see a question about some international students have a GPA out of 10. So will the grading system translation to out of 4 be considered? If not, check me. Oh, was I? I see. Oh, you guys, I was sharing it to the wrong group. Everyone, hang on. Let me repost them. No, I've been happily posting links. Did I do it? Hang on.
I think Grace has also reshared a lot of the ones that you've mentioned.
Oh,
So you're good.
Grace, thank you. Okay. So the question about the GPA out of 10 and scaling it to the out of 4, if you mean, is that going to be considered when we talk about GPA as it relates to being eligible for employment? We look at the grades of F or U and the 3.0 for your grades here. So in your first quarter here, where you maybe don't have, this is your first quarter here at UC, you don't have a grade point average that we're referencing, so we wouldn't start looking at your UC grades until winter. So you sort of get like 1 free quarter for academic eligibility. I hope that's what you meant, but let us know if that is not what you meant. And then the IA links are back out there again. Thank you again, Grace. And oh, and traveling assistants. Okay, here's a follow-up to the traveling assistant question. Looking for discounts or such for flights from traveling from the home country to San Diego. So Grace was right. The benefits of academic employment do not include travel assistance. But I would, I'm not familiar with any programs that, or, like administrative programs that we have that cover that. You may want to check with your home department, the department where you're going to be earning your degree from, to see if they know of any funds that you might be able to apply for, or if even those departments offer any. But there aren't any on the employment side.
I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat. This isn't necessarily like discounts for travel, but we do have what we call our surf check guide. It's our Coming to UC San Diego guide. And it talks a little bit about different resources that might help this topic. So for example, resources for like arranging transportation from the airport to campus. We know that many of our international students will fly into LAX, and that can be a little bit more of a transportation issue than just flying into San Diego. And so the Surf Check Guide actually covers a lot of different information to like what to consider when traveling to the US, arranging transportation. It also talks a little bit about like setting up different accounts. So setting up like your phone account or your bank account or things like that. So I just put that in the chat, so that can be a helpful resource when considering some of these topics as well. All right, so we are approaching the end of our time together today, and I just want to again thank our co-presenters so much. Such a wealth of knowledge and expertise is represented here, and we truly couldn't do this without you all. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, and thank you to our attendees who have been tuning in and just asking such great questions, so engaged during our time together. Panelists, if you want to put any last like contact information into the chat. So if folks do have follow-up questions that arise, what's the best way to reach out to you if you want to reiterate that? From our end, you can always reach out to our office at icontact.ucsd.edu. And even if we aren't necessarily the office to answer that specific question, we do our best to connect you with our campus colleagues across the campus. And so Yes, thank you again. I see a lot of positive encouragement and gratitude coming through the Q&A as well. So again, thank you to our panelists for just making this what it is. So we appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time for our next pre-arrival webinar. Thanks, everyone. Take care.